From a professional soccer career to becoming a driving force in the mortgage industry, Brian Covey has shown what it takes to find your competitive edge. Get off the sidelines and get in the game. Find your competitive edge with Brian Covey.
What's happening, guys, and welcome back to another edition of Finding Your Competitive Edge. So if you've been following along for any point in time, you know we bring on great guests that have a competitive edge. They have found it, and they are flexing that in the market in the way of service. They're serving people, solving problems. They're helping people navigate through the market that we are in, and also successful markets that we've experienced in the past. And I believe you can be successful in any market if you have clarity, you've got focus, and you've actually got the discipline, right? When you have the tools, you're going to be able to win. So our guest today, I'm excited because Burr Cota is not only a speaker, he has got a coaching program that he's been coaching people individually, companies. He's been doing his group coaching, which we'll talk about there. He talks about Polaris principles and some leadership guidance that I think is needed today. And so as Burr unpacks some of that, I think you guys are going to want to take out a pen and paper, because right now, I believe if you're a leader today, I believe we all are leaders in some capacity at home, or you've got people that are counting on you. We've got to find a way of how we show up and deliver value and help people solve problems every day. And if you're feeling like you're not doing that well, or you know you're called to do more, the show's going to be for you. So we're going to jump right into it. Burr, welcome, my friend.
Thank you, Brian. Glad to be here.
Dude, I'm excited. And by the way, the speaker reel you sent me was on fire. I loved that. And I love, and the one thing that stood out to me is, like, as I was prepping for our calls, just your passion for what you do. You can tell that you've got this purpose driven. And I know you were talking about some of the group coaching and things we'll touch on later that you've got coming up. But I love how you're living in that. And so I would love to take people back a little bit of how did you even get into this space of coaching and working with companies, clients, and what you're doing today?
Yeah, thank you for that. And thanks for being some feedback for me on that upcoming speaker reel. I started my career in outside sales and then was promoted a few times. I think my supervisor saw in me the potential to lead others, and I was operating as a leader. So I was promoted a few times, leading teams in the medical device space. And as I kind of climbed that ladder, I continued to look at myself as a coach. That was a part of the job that I loved. I didn't think of myself as a manager. That word sounded kind of dirty and off-putting and had kind of a negative connotation in my mind, at least. But I loved getting to understand, my people, their strengths, their limitations, and really getting clear on what they wanted from their lives and helping them get everything they could while they worked with me. And so, flash forward, 15 years of that life, and a friend of mine who's 20 years older, my mentor, Tim, started his own leadership development company. His leadership team had gone to an offsite retreat that was like a 5-day drink from a fire hose kind of thing, where they had personality assessments, a 360 feedback. They were cold and dirty and doing team building stuff out in the woods. And it was really life-changing for my friend and his organization. They came back and really, unlike a lot of situations where those great experiences wash away as you get back to your day-to-day 9 to 5, this group of leaders really committed to it and said, hey, let's keep this alive and let's figure out how to make it better. My friend ended up coming to his leaders that own this organization and said, hey, I want to start my own leadership development company. Here's what the framework would look like. And so really cool story. They supported that. They partnered with him as he basically created this company and hired his successor, and then phased himself out of the business. And he's my wife's best friend's dad, if you can follow that. And so I met him when I was dating my wife, and there was something about this guy that just resonated. He had a lot of presence, and you could just see he was a dialed in man. And I didn't have a lot of great role models myself. And so I was pulled towards this guy. When he started this company, he said, hey, this is a whole new world. And I think coaching is, something that's going to open up. And as soon as I found out that coaching was an actual thing, it was a practice, it was a business, I was fascinated. I got my first coaching certification. He gave me my first referrals. It was a side hustle for many years. And I've been married for 21 years. I have 5 kids, and trying to figure out how to quit the day job and go all in on coaching and consulting was, a 5-year process for me, but got some certifications, built and was able to fully go all in and quit the day job and become a full-time coaching consultant. So I've been coaching for 10 plus years.
I love it, man. I think back to, we were talking about this before we started too, with my soccer days. I think about some of the biggest influences, like outside of my dad and, coaches in my life, and then mentors that have come in. We can probably all think back, and as you're listening, think back to one or two. If you've had more, then you're probably really blessed to have people in your life that have poured into. And I love how you said that about coaching, because I never really resonated with that management thing, right? Like I was similar to you, in the mortgage world, and you're in medical device. You get promoted because you're a top producer. And then a lot of times it's like, hey, Burr, here you go. Like, go lead people, go manage people. And you're like, man, all we were focused on was like the numbers and the data.
Yeah.
What do you think is the delineage? People that are listening out there, what's your definition, or how you've seen, what's the difference between coaching and what I would just call the old school of management or leadership model?
Yeah, I think that old school mentality really stems from an era where people were looked at as tools, as resources, as line items on a spreadsheet, and I've been reduced to a line item on a spreadsheet. I've been through a layoff where our corporate office just decided, hey, we've got a Sacramento office and a Bay Area office, and need to trim some costs nationally. Let's close 20 offices. Hey, let's close Sacramento, and we can just work out of the Bay Area and just have that be our standalone office. I think that old school mentality, and I think a lot of people feel that in the world today, that they don't really matter. They're not really cared about. They're not valued. They're not seen. They're not respected. They are just being used by their organizations to get something, to move the needle in the business and to generate revenue. And, that does not inspire greatness. That does not inspire people to weather challenging times and to give their very best, to give something called discretionary effort, which is, coming in early and staying late. It's doing the little things when no one's watching because you care about the mission of the organization. You're not getting that when you feel like you're just a tool being used, right? That's old school management. Leadership and coaching is much more about approaching each individual with a genuine sense of curiosity and believing that there is greatness in every one of those people that you have the honor of having on your team. And this doesn't mean that you're always going to like everybody you work with, or that you're going to be best friends outside of work. You might vote differently. You might have different religions. You might have all kinds of different belief systems. I think there's beauty and greatness in every person. I believe that we were all put here by God. And if you can look at people with a real genuine sense of curiosity, I want to understand what makes this person tick. What's their why? Where is that greatness? And how can I help pull that out of them and help them have the best experience possible while working for this organization? That's coaching. That's leadership.
Hey guys, it's Brian here. I hope you are enjoying the show. By the way, if you're an entrepreneur or a solopreneur looking to grow your personal brand, make a bigger impact, maybe increase your leads and grow your revenue, let's help you get started today by connecting up with my friends over at the Brand Builders Group. You've heard me talk about them, but if you're new here, this is definitely the first step to get you started in turning your reputation into revenue. Head over to freebrandcall.com/Brian Covey. Again, to set up your free brand call, go to freebrandcall.com/Brian Covey to set up a free strategy call with one of the team at Brand Builders, and they will dive into your specific goals for how you want to grow your personal brand. I can't wait to hear how it goes. Great definition, G. That's beautiful, because I think we've all had people like that, probably on both ends of the spectrum, where you're like, man, you just felt like a number. And it's like, when you're hitting your numbers, you're good. Yep. And, I've been through a couple of layoffs, unfortunately, being in the mortgage space for over 2 decades. And you definitely feel it, but you also know the people that treated you as a human. I remember, Burr, in the 07, 08 crash, we had our first 2 kids, and obviously everything's collapsing. And my job got eliminated, like many people in Florida. I'll never forget, one of my mentors came to me and he's like, man, we're gonna have to lay you off. We're gonna post these other jobs. Everybody's gonna have to reapply, do all this stuff. I remember saying, I said, I'll do whatever it takes. Like, what can I do?
Yeah.
Like, well, will you do this? Will you do that? It ended up being not the sexiest job ever. It was part of helping with some layoffs and restructuring and closing some offices and like some administrative stuff. I'm like, just sign me up. I remember he gave me a chance, and that always stuck with me is he could just let me go like everyone else. And I think about, as a leader today, we've got to show up and be that person. And, you just said that very articulately too. If, when you can see the beauty and the excellence and what God has gifted people with, when you see that in them, it might mean that you have to eliminate this role over here and the way it's structured today, but you say, you know what? I see your talents and skills. We need help over here. Can you go do this? Because they're a human and a person. Too many companies, I feel, don't look at that. So I'd love for you to expand on that today for people that are looking at that. There's a lot of businesses that are going into a season. We've seen some earnings reports, unfortunately, already going into the holiday that are not picking up like they thought they would. And it could be one of those times where someone's looking at their team going, I don't know what to do. I'm overstaffed. Revenue's not there. How can leaders today start to manage and navigate through some of those times that I think many people are going to be facing?
Yeah, it's a really tough situation. And I've been on both sides of that. You know, mentioned the layoff. I've also been the person letting people go. Maybe you have as well. It's awful. I was just coaching a director, one of my clients yesterday, and he was laying someone off yesterday. You know, most of my clients haven't had, thankfully, you know, broad blanket wide kind of layoffs or RIFs, you know, reduction in force. But what they have done, and I think every company is doing this, is looking at their people and going, all right, leadership team, who are our A players and our B players? Let's get those people in a bucket, and we're going to talk about them in a minute. Who are your C players and below? Who's not a cultural fit and who's not meeting the standards that we're aiming for? Let's come up with a plan to get those people exited quickly, and in a way that's, you know, hopefully honoring to the person and to the organization. And then let's talk about those bubble people, right? Those C plus B minus people on your teams. We got to figure those people out real quick. Either get them in the A and B category that we're going to wrap our arms around, or let's help them find either a different seat on the bus or, you know, a different bus altogether and outside the organization. And so those are tough conversations. I really do think there's a way to do those things, to lay people off and let people go, that is honoring to the person. And the truth is, you know, I've been a part of organizations, or part of teams anyway, where the word family was thrown around a lot. And I'm not opposed to that. It's really hard in moments like this, because family doesn't let go of family, right? Family's forever. Family's ohana, right? It's not going anywhere. It should be permanent. And the truth is, no matter how much you love your people, it's still a business. And I've heard of some amazing stories of leaders, you know, foregoing their salary for a period of time and putting off their own bonuses and really restructuring it from the top down to lead by example, to minimize the impacts of down economic times. But the bottom line truth is, there are times when we do have to part ways with some people. And I think, again, if we need to be thinking in terms of the standard, what are we trying to honor here? We are aiming for something special. And I think every company wants to be special. Every company worth its salt has values and has a mission statement on the wall. Hopefully those things mean something. Hopefully those are things that guide decision-making from the top down. If you're clear as a leader on what the standard is that you are aiming for, and someone is not meeting that standard, you are dishonoring the standard, the organization, yourself, by allowing that person to exist in a substandard way. And so I think a lot of these conversations that are happening right now and that are coming have been put off. They've been coming for a long time, and people haven't wanted to look in the mirror, haven't wanted to deal with it, and just recognize this person, you know, they've been here a year or they've been here 3 years, and they're just doing enough to not get themselves fired. The unfortunate reality is, we're only as strong as our weakest link, right? And the standard of performance, which you are willing to accept, is the new standard. And so if you've been accepting that standard, you've actually been kind of de-incentivizing your high performers and your high potential people to be their very best, to bring their best. Because if that kind of substandard performance is acceptable over there, why should I kill myself, right? Why? I thought we were aiming for excellence. I thought we were aiming for something special, when this other nonsense with coming in late and leaving early and, you know, putting in half-baked work is accepted. All right, well, you know, for some people, it can really turn them off.
Yeah, I love that. It makes me think of that book, Jocko Willink and Leif Babbitt on, you know, extreme ownership, and they talk about that.
Totally,
and,
yeah, love that book.
Man, one of the best. And so I would love to know, kind of a side note, your favorite leadership books. Anything as of recent that you've read in the last year or two that was one you'd say, oh, this is the one I recommend. This is the kind of my go-to.
Oh man, I think I have a top three. I don't make universal prescriptions for my people. I really do approach my coaching and everything I do with a genuine sense of curiosity. So while I do have a structure, I do try and in my individual coaching tailor towards the needs and interests of the individual. I don't assign people a book to read if I know they're not going to read it. If someone's already working 60 or 70 hours a week, their marriage is struggling, they're treading water, they're not the parent they want to be, they're not making time for their fitness and health and their mind. Me assigning a book for them to read is like, okay, cool. One more thing on top of your plate there to just, tumble off. Right. So I'm very mindful of that. And if someone doesn't have the time to read, I highly recommend an app called Blinkist, Blinkist. Should be a sponsor for them or something. But it's a short summary of just about every nonfiction book you can think of. You can either read the blinks, as they call them, or you can listen to them. Yeah. I'll sign my clients. Like everyone's got 15 minutes here and there to digest some pearls from some books. But to your question, my top books, or top three that I do recommend all the time are Atomic Habits by James Clear. I love, obviously, a lot of our behavior and our results really come back to how we show up daily and what we do to prepare ourselves to meet the challenges and opportunities in our lives. And that book is just filled with practical, tactical ways to design your environment and to set your life up so that you can start making changes. And as a guy who, flashing back 15, 16 years ago, I was 40 pounds overweight, eating like crap, drinking too much alcohol, not sleeping enough, just burning the candle at both ends, punishing myself. And that book wasn't written back then, but how I got to where I am today was by making small 1% changes, by being intentional and consistent and building discipline in myself. So that's a great book, and it's a good listen as well if you're an audiobook person. Another one is Deep Work by Cal Newport. Interestingly, he's a computer scientist, so he almost comes off, his follow-up book to that was Digital Minimalism. So he almost comes off as like anti-technology. He is not. He makes a great point in Deep Work that we are like, the ability to focus is like a muscle, and we are not flexing that muscle. It's atrophying. It is dying. It's weakening. And we've got dual monitors, and we've got our phones that can do, just about everything. We've got all these distractions and notifications. We've got, open office designs where people can walk by and get our attention, and we're running and gunning and knocking down things on our to-do list. And the truth is, we are distracted, and a lot of times we're taking, simple tasks and it's taken longer for us to get done. And really the truth is, the most important things in our lives deserve the appropriate amount of time and energy that in order to give our best to those things. And especially professionally, like the most intellectually challenging lifts you have at work, you should do those things in an undistracted, focused way at a time that you are your very best, if you want to bring your very best to it, right? So that book, and then finally, Essentialism by Greg McKeown, which is about getting clear on what the most important things are in your world. This is a difference between being busy and being effective, right? I hear this all the time in my coaching practice. I'm so busy, and we all can fall victim to the tyranny of the urgent. There are always fires to be put out, but it doesn't matter what your role is or how busy you are, how many reports you have. The truth is, you have the capacity to create clarity around what truly is moving the needle in your life professionally. You need to fight like heck to spend enough time in those areas and to not allow yourself to get distracted by things that aren't in that essential category. So I think if you combine those three books, build some great habits, be better about how you work and create blocks of time to do focused, uninterrupted work, and then get clear on what the most important things you should be working on when you're in those focused blocks of time, and then stack days and weeks and quarters and years like that. That's how your trajectory is going to go, way up.
I love those three. And I'm glad you brought them up too, because that's a question I get asked all the time. So I'm always curious of like, what are coaches like you working with people every day? What are you reading? What are you recommending? I love you said that too. Don't miss this, guys, is depending on where you are in your season and what you already have going on and where you want to go, right? Like there's a different book for each of us based on where we are. But I love those. I've come back to Atomic Habits a lot. It's interesting you chose that one because that's one. Even yesterday, I was having this conversation with someone. And so for all the leaders out there, I do think it's the input, like you're learning the skills, and you said you got to work the muscle and all that too. But it's also this common language that I think leaders are readers, right? We share that a lot. Like leaders read. That's how they learn some of the things that they're learning from the greats that have given us their work and insights. And what a cool common language. And you mentioned standards, and I love that. One of my coaches, Ben Newman, he talks about standards all the time. And I love that you went down that path, because a lot of companies today probably don't have their standards in order, or to your point, they've gotten lax on them.
Yeah.
And they're wondering, like, why are we not as productive as we want to be?
Yeah.
And you have those people. And I remember doing that exercise you mentioned, like put out the A's, the B's, the C's, and do that depth chart, as they would call it, formally. If you haven't done that in a while, eye-opening. Because, if you get together with your team and you start to rank people, you start to look and go, okay, we got to either coach this group up, we got to get them to a certain standard and what we've said that we want, or we probably have some people that maybe just are not the fits. And if we don't have the conversation, we're not leading well. So, well, before we started, you had a cool quote from David Bowie that I thought was really interesting. So I wanted to interject it here because I just thought that was a cool quote. It's cool how God works. And you said you had shared this with some of your coaching clients and all of that. I'd love for you to share that with our audience today, because one, I didn't expect it to be David Bowie, but two, profound quote.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I ping my clients, once a week, twice a week, with, quotes, reminders, different things. And it's Friday. I wanted to send a note of encouragement. And frankly, half the things I'm reading, half the things I'm sending my people are as much for me as for anyone else. It's not like you or I, Brian, are above being coached and growing, right? You have a coach. I have a coach as well. Like, I am on the same path. All of my coaching clients are too. I am trying to be all that I can be, make the most of all that I've been given, and to do it in a way that's, I'm honoring my wife and my children. I'm being the father and the husband. It's, I've lived my life out of balance, and I nearly lost my family because of it. And so I try and inspire myself and my team and my people with some great quotes periodically. So here's one from David Bowie, as you mentioned. If you feel safe in the area that you're working in, you're not working in the right area. Always go a little further into the water than you feel you're capable of being in. Go a little bit out of your depth. And when you don't feel that your feet are quite touching the bottom, you're just about in the right place to do something exciting. So it's like, man, and what I was telling my clients is, hey, I know every one of you is uncomfortable right now. I know every one of you is feeling stretched, some of you to near a breaking point. And I am too. I'm right there with you, and I'm choosing it daily. I could choose to be comfortable. So could they. We could all pump the brakes a little bit, take our foot off the accelerator, and coast for a minute. We could do that. The truth is, we are meant to do hard things. We are meant to grow. And I think if, an exercise I love from Dan Sullivan, I'm blanking on the name of the book, he and Benjamin Hardy wrote it. It'll come back to me, but it's always measure backwards. And the exercise is, it's a journal prompt. Where are you today? And just answer that however you want to. For myself, I answered that in a series of 5 buckets that I pay attention to for myself. Where's my marriage today? Where am I as a father today? Where is my career today? Where are our finances today? And where's my health? Physically, mentally, spiritually, where am I today as far as my health goes? And I journaled about those 5 areas for myself, about where I was today. Then the next step is, where were you 10 years ago? And I actually pulled up iPhoto, looked at 10 years ago in our photos. I was like, oh, look at the little kids. 10 years ago. My 25-year-old was 15 years old, and, just all the way down, looking at the house we were living in, the car we were driving, remembering what our bank account looked like, what life felt like, what my marriage felt like back then. And it was, the pictures really brought the emotional pull to me. And then I wrote about where I was then 10 years ago in those 5 areas. And Brian, I highly recommend this exercise for everybody. The undeniable truth, undeniable fact is that I was further along in every one of those 5 areas in a way that it's hard to even describe than I was 10 years ago. And I think for most of us on this path of trying to become all that we were designed to be, I think we'll all see that same thing. All of my coaching clients that have done this exercise have reported back to me the same experience. Like, holy smokes, I am carrying such a heavier load than I was 10 years ago. I'm doing so much more. The work is so much harder. I'm managing team. I've got a bigger family. I'm growing and developing in pretty much every area that matters. And for those of us that are sometimes challenged with our inner voice and our self-talk, and we're measuring against perfection, we're measuring against an ideal state, this can be a really healthy exercise to go, okay, like having lofty standards and a very high bar that you're aiming for, that is a good thing. But it can go we can go too far with that at times, where we can actually place a ceiling upon ourselves with our limiting beliefs, and our self-talk can become so negative and even toxic that we hold ourselves back. And I think my coach recommended this exercise to me because he heard enough of that from me. It was like, really? Like, who are you comparing yourself to? Like the Ben Newmans of the world, and these people that are just, authors and speakers on these giant stages and have done and accomplished these amazing things. It was really, really helpful for me to see how far I've come in 10 years. And then I think the really exciting part is to journal the next stage. Where do you want to be in 90 days? Where do you want to be in 1 year, 3, 5, 10? I did all of that. It took me a couple of weeks of just Saturday, Sunday mornings. I get up early every day anyway. And I just it's my favorite part of the week is Saturday, Sunday mornings, 6 a.m., 7 a.m., throw the fire on, dogs curled up next to me, get my journal out, and just spend an hour or two before the family's up and moving. And it was so healthy for me because I can now see, holy smokes, first of all, I've come a really long way in 10 years. And with the work and dedication and commitment and consistency and atomic habits and essentialism and deep work principles that I've been applying for several years now, I can't even imagine what's going to be possible in 10 years. It's scary to think. It's exciting. I know I'm going to be somewhere amazing in 10 years, no matter what the economy does, no matter what happens in the Middle East or Ukraine and Russia, no matter what happens with the next election, no matter what happens, period. I know that I'm on the path towards something way better than where I'm at today. I'm on the path to greatness. And I think we all can make that choice for ourselves.
Dude, I love that. I love the practicality of it too. And we've done that. I found these 5-year blocks are pretty big. As I look back, and I love the 10-year look back, there's been these 5-year blocks. Almost, I equate it almost like when you go through high school or college or something, you got 4 years. Some people maybe college 5 years, right? And you look back in those 5 years, you go, wow, I was there in all of those areas. I love how you've got those broken out, very similar to how I break them. I would love your input on this as people that are listening going, okay, Burr, that sounds great. Brian, I would love to do that. As they're going through that and they're looking back 5 years ago, did you rank yourself? How did you go back and really qualify where you were to look at how far you had come today? Were there any things that you measured in those categories specific? Because some are easier, right?
Yeah.
Financial things, pretty easy. Right?
Super easy. Totally. I'm more of a writer. Like, writing helps me think. So these are some somewhat long journal entries. I didn't have a lot of metrics in there, and I actually like the idea quite a bit. Obviously, the financial side would be pretty straightforward, but how do you measure who you are as a father? And I have 5 kids, so like to think about each of them. Where was I 5 years ago with them as a parent, and where do I want to be? I think some areas that would probably be helpful for people that I didn't do, but I think would be good, would be, how much one-on-one time are you spending with each kid? Maybe you could measure that. I think each, again, as a guy with a lot of kids, there are times where it was challenging to make time for each of them individually. That's probably a good benchmark. How often was I dating my wife? I think it's important that we continue to court and pursue our spouses and to really try and keep that love and friendship alive and vibrant. And I think there are times when we all take that relationship for granted. The truth is, it's the most important relationship that we have in our lives. And I think looking back on, was I really dating my wife? Was I initiating the dates too? That's something I have fallen into that trap where my wife will initiate a lot of dates. Hey, what do we have going on this weekend? I'm like, hey, nothing Friday night. Oh, do you want to go do something? Sure. And then I feel like because I booked the reservation at the restaurant that I somehow initiated that date. The truth is, she came up with the idea. And so That's a good point, though. I would love to come up with more metrics on kind of how to measure progress.
I think whoever, as you look at this, just to have something to measure where you were, where you are, and then as you look forward, I love that you take that and you go, okay, I've come this far in 5-10 years. Now, where do I want to be? And that gap, and there's so much excitement. I don't know about you, but I can sense it. Like when you're writing it out, like when I write out where I want to be, and my wife and I will do this together. Like, what do we want to be doing in 5? Like, where are we? What are our kids doing? And I think when you can visualize it and see it, one of my mentors would always share, like, hey, if you want to have a house on the beach and live there, go visit that place often. Like, go and do those things. And so that's been a huge help for me. And I think for anybody listening, it's like, if you're not doing this today, this could be one thing that you add in to really set the stage going into next year, how far you've come, where you're at, and where you want to go. I think the beauty in that is like the self-awareness. When you're really honest with yourself, you go, there's some places I need to level up, like you shared. And hopefully everybody gets that, and you write them out. If you're listening and you're writing that down, guys, share that with us. I love reading the notes, the comments, the DMs that we get on the show. I love seeing people go, man, that really spoke to me. Here's what I'm doing. And then we can create something around that for our community as we go forward. So
love it.
Shifting gears. You've been speaking on stages, you're coaching, you've got a lot of experience in this space. For people listening out there, I know you mentioned earlier, you're going to be launching this Purpose Unleashed next year, which is an online course. Tell us about that. And I'd love to know any advice you might have for aspiring coaches that are really wanting to get into this space more.
Yeah, thank you for that. In creating a course, I wanted to give people a solid foundation. And in my coaching, this is where I start with all my coaching clients. And the more exposure I get to more people, the more I realize that we all need to be rock solid in these areas. So having clear values and a clear vision for our lives, getting clear around our mental state, and our beliefs and what we're allowing to kind of roll around in our heads. And so there was a time where I felt like life was meaningless, that my life was I was just treading water. I was on this hamster wheel pursuing, some kind of status. And I had the wife, the kids, the house, the job, and yet I felt empty and numb. And I was really lacking that deeper connection to my purpose. So I needed clear direction. So that's the first portion of the program. The next problem that we're really solving is a lack of consistency. I think we want to get to a place where we're all disciplined and consistent and making those 1% gains. And I think getting clear on how to build the habits that we want to get us to where we want to go, to build routines and accountability systems to help us stay on the path. That's the next portion of that program. And then finally, the last program is really about some of those essentialism and deep work type concepts about effectiveness. How can I get more done in less time? How can I make a bigger impact and get out of this kind of tyranny of the urgent? We fall in this urgency trap, and we really want to be making an amplified impact. And so getting clear on how we work, how we direct our time and energy. So the program, Purpose Unleashed, is going to be a combination of videos people can watch at their own pace, weekly live seminars and engagements. There will be an online community. So I'm really excited about the launch. I've got a group already lined up and starting. So I'll be running a couple at the same time beginning in January.
Dude, that's cool. I'm excited for it. And I love you brought up the hamster wheel, and we're redoing our website. And that's something we've talked about a lot. Is I feel like that's been an area that people that I've been called to serve is those people that are putting in the work, but they're on this hamster wheel and they don't feel like they're getting anywhere.
Yeah.
And man, I have been there, and it can be one of the worst defeating feelings. So I love that you mentioned that, and you're laying the foundation for people, and you've got these areas of success to give them the blueprint, because, as much as we'd like to think all the information is out there, and it is, to really make it fit you and for you to understand it and go implement it, sometimes it takes a great coach to come in, and you've stepped into that. For the aspiring coaches out there, what would you share with them that you've learned in the last year or several years coaching people that maybe you wish you had known?
Totally. I think getting really clear on your value, on your uniqueness, on your perspective, on what you bring, and really doubling down on that. And it's really hard to do. And I think trying not to be, liked by everyone and be, 31 flavors of Brian. Like, you got to be the Brian Covey, right? You've got to be the one and clear version of yourself. And if you're trying to serve everyone, you end up serving no one. And the truth is, there's so many great coaches and resources out there right now. And we've all done this. We've searched around and I've, checked someone's stuff out, and it's great. They've got a following. It's dialed in. It's professional. They're getting results. And yet it's not for me. I can feel like it's just not my vibe. But to someone else that resonated. And I think that as an aspiring coach, if you don't get that clarity on who you are and who you really want to serve, then you're never really going to reach people in a real genuine, deep way.
I love that. Yeah, we talk about that a lot at brand builders, some of our friends of, once you can crack that code, and for many of us, there's probably 3 different numbers in there, and some of us have 1 or 2 numbers, but to get all 3 in sequence and that harmony of, wow, this is who I'm called to serve.
Yeah.
And like you said, just niching down in that. I think some of the best advice that I wish I had early on of like, because you do want to serve everybody. Early on, you're like, I'll take on anybody. Like,
totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Same's true in our mortgage business. I remember one of our coaches would share with us. He's like, who are you best equipped to serve? Is it the first time home buyer, the move up buyer? Where is it? Go after them and speak to them. And then you'll still get the other people that might be fits, but you build your business and your core on that. So
totally. I think, another piece of that as a new coach, I just met with, it's funny, a friend of mine, remarried, and we caught up after probably 5. We used to be neighbors, and we caught up after a while. He's in the military, stationed somewhere else, and moved. And he sent me a picture of his son somewhere and playing football, and we just reconnected. His new wife is a new coach. She's got a new certification. She's been putting in the work, and he's like, oh, my wife Rosemary is now coaching. I'm like, that's awesome. If she'd ever want to connect, I would love to help any way I can. And she jumped on it. And my one piece of advice for her was, don't go alone. And I think I did that for too long. And I did have my mentor, but his work was really around a leadership course that he was doing. It wasn't around coaching. And there are so many great communities. I'm a member of the Brand Builders community. Rory Vaden and AJ Vaden are amazing. I think, their message to me that really resonated on Lewis Howes' podcast and on Ed Milet's podcast was, you are best positioned to serve the person you once were, right? And I think a lot of those aspiring coaches, your credibility comes from having come out of some of these storms and grown through those, and that's what you can share. And I think so many aspiring coaches have this really, really toxic imposter syndrome where I'm not enough. I haven't built and sold some $1 million startup, or I haven't done this or that. I haven't written a book. I'm not on stages. And it's like, you know what though? People don't need you to be like, your people are out there. You've gone through this journey. Get clear on what that uniqueness is and who you want to serve, and then go give. And I think I love that about brand builders too, is there's such a spirit of give away your knowledge, give away yourself, and serve other people, and the rest is going to take care of itself.
Yeah, that's powerful. Once I've heard that, I've lived by that. And I tell everybody is, once you have clarity in certain areas of your life, you're like, okay, it's not that the work gets easier because you're still putting in the work, but it sure does feel like I'm not on a hamster wheel and just going nowhere. I'm actually moving the ball down the field. And that to me is, that's what we're called to do. So, well, brothers, we wrap up. I would love to know, in the last year or so, you've been coaching a lot of clients. Is there a common problem or a common theme that you've seen that maybe our listeners are listening going, man, I wonder if it's just me.
Yeah.
Am I the only one struggling with this? Like, what have you heard, and what are the problems that people are looking to have solved today that maybe you've been exposed and they've come to you and said, man, I need help here. Yeah. Sometimes we feel like we're alone. It's just us.
Yeah, 100%. And I think some of this is a result of COVID and coming out of that experience of being isolated, and people are back to work in some parts of the country, not, some company, again, state to state, region to region, company to company. Some are all back in the office. Some are hybrid. Some are completely remote now. Either way, people have come out of that whole experience feeling a lot more isolated. And a lot of people have exchanged their commutes for a few days, at least 2 or 3 days of working from home. And those, that life, that commute has been replaced with meetings and emails. And the theme that I see from people is a theme of burnout, of people treading water on that hamster wheel and trying to figure out, how do I get off of this? Like the day in the life of a lot of my clients is, up early, trying to take care of themselves physically, mentally, kiss their spouse goodbye, kiss the kids goodbye. And then they're jumping into meetings all day long. And this, I seriously, genuinely, I worry for some of my clients, because some of these people are skipping, lunch. They're working straight through. They're not eating all day. They're just going from meeting to meeting to meeting. Meanwhile, their emails are stacking up all day long. They're camera off and muted for some of these meetings because they're trying to just stay on top of the most urgent emails. They close their laptop at 5 or 6 p.m., grab a meal, kiss the wife and kids, hang out for an hour or two, and then the laptop's back out by 8 p.m. and they're trying to get caught up on the emails that stacked up, until 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, and then rinse, repeat, back up at 5 a.m. doing the same thing again the next day. And I really do think it's dangerous. I think, and unfortunately, I've had several clients come to me post panic attack. I had a lady that actually collapsed in a restaurant, and there was a nurse present in the restaurant, and everyone present, including the nurse, thought she was having a heart attack. It was a panic attack, as it turned out. And this woman had 10 pounds that she had lost that she couldn't afford to lose. Her clothes were falling off of her. She wasn't eating. She wasn't sleeping. She was just grinding so hard and committed to the mission and to try and deliver and keep her commitments, but really not creating healthy boundaries to raise her hand and ask for help. And I think that is the first step, is really going to someone within your organization, hopefully your direct supervisor, but it can be human resources, or a friend within the company, just to say, I'm not okay. I'm not okay, and I can't maintain this. I need help. Can we talk about that? And I think people are so worried about being deficient and not being enough that they're hesitant to ask for help. And I think it's really imperative that people do. So back to Purpose Unleashed, I think getting clear on your values and your vision for your life, and creating good habits and boundaries and how you work so you can work as effectively and efficiently as possible. Those all help, but it really does start with raising your hand and getting better at that skill of saying, no, I can't make this meeting. Actually, I can't do one more thing. Because if your plate is literally full and you put one more thing on top, something's tumbling off, and that might be your health. That might be your sanity. And it shouldn't be an option.
Man. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. And for everybody that's listening out there, if you're like, that's me, and you can't get help where you are, reach out to one of us. Glad to provide you with help, support, resources, all that stuff. Because I think that awareness around your mental and physical health, to your point, those are the things you cannot sacrifice, because everything else will follow, and you'll end up destroying all of this that you've got. So if you're listening, that's you. Please take this as a notice, as maybe a prompt, as an urge, as maybe a sign of ask for help. And we're here to do that. So, Burr, unbelievable conversation. I know we could continue on. I want to make sure people know, where can they find you and connect up with you? If they've listened today and they're like, hey man, I need some more Burr in my life, I want to join in the community or possibly coach with you, where should they connect up with you?
Absolutely. You can go to my website, Polaris, like the North Star, and then Principles, like I have Principles. PolarisPrinciples.com is a great spot. And then I'm on LinkedIn as my primary. I'm just getting into Instagram. I for many years prided myself on being like this best kept secret, and I was not on social media very actively. I am working towards reaching more of my people, and recognize that social media is a great vehicle for that. So find me on LinkedIn, look for me on Instagram, and my website's a great resource as well.
I love it. Well, we'll promote it out. We'll put the links in there so everybody can connect up with you. You got your course coming out on Purpose Unleashed in the first quarter of next year. And thank you for showing up and just sharing your insights. It's refreshing. I think for a lot of people, the coaching space, even like the mortgage space and others, sometimes gets a bad rap or different things. And it's refreshing to hear somebody like yourself that you're passionate, you know what you're called to do, and you're using your gifts to actually make people's lives better, and you're enjoying it. What a novel concept, right? As we go on. So thank you for your time. And I know the audience and everybody listening in is going to love this. They're going to rewind it. There were several really good spots in there that I think for people listening, you can go implement and apply and get ready for 2024, because it will be here before we know it. We want to make sure you guys are winning. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Brian. Take care. Have a great weekend.
You too. Guys, it's been another episode of Finding Your Competitive Edge. You've heard it straight from Burr, who moves from medical sales. He's speaking, coaching, doing all these things. Whatever's on your heart, whatever you want to do, you've got to learn the skills. You've got to put in that time to learn what it takes to be great. And then you can serve people at that higher level. So this has been an inspirational story. Make sure you follow along with Burr's journey and connect up with him as we've got more coming. Leave us a review, like, 5 stars, all that fun stuff. That's how we know that we're reaching you and we're giving you the right information, the right people, and the stories. Till then, we'll catch you on the next episode. See you guys.